What's up? So let's talk about this really great feature that Juno added to Juno D. And Juno D is something that like as a developer I use all the time. I probably like literally hundreds of times by now. And there was this one feature that got added very quickly, actually. And we have Reece with us here, so maybe we can talk about what this is, how fast it happened, the story of that, and why it's useful.
Yep. So the feature is adding more configuration variables to developers. This was something that was asked by Mike on Twitter, and within about that later that night, I had the feature implemented without having to force the SDK. And any other team can also implement this for their chain for transactions. So it's very useful for validators, for more technical people that are doing local testing, as well as the developers, just to remove a lot of configuration flags that you have to set, which causes a lot of headache and bash scripts and in your environment. And it simplifies it where you set it to values that work and will continue to work for as you move to other chains you know with that configuration there.
I love that. And so here on my screen here, I've got like four different iTerm windows open. I have like Neutron, Osmosis, Juno, and Archway. And you can see that I've done like config, that command. And that shows like basically the settings that you've done. And one of these is not like the other, and that's Juno. And so there's, how many are there? We have gas prices, gas adjustment, fees, fee account, and note are added. And what that means is basically I can say Juno D config note, hi there. And then if I say Juno D config again, then we'll see that that is just set there. So all of these are, I mean, in my memory as a developer, I'm not doing like validation all the time, but as a developer, every time you want to do a contract execution, you say like Juno D or whatever the daemon is, TX wasm execute, and then you have to add all of these flags. But these are all added for us here. And maybe, can we talk about the fees and fee account one real quick?
Yeah, so fees is just the normal dash dash fees that you would supply, and this is where you just give if you don't want to specify gas or gas prices and stuff because that might change from different validators. You can set a flat fee of say 5,000 U Juno. That way that as those new blocks come through, you just use that directly. And the fee account is if you are using fee grant or that fee share method from I believe it's the Omniflix team that created that. You can just specify, hey, that account is doing it on my behalf already if you've already set that up, and it just uses that through the config without any extra environment variables. That way you can just do the normal Juno D TX bank send or whatever, and it'll auto pull all of those in as you expect with like your dash dash node coming from this section. So it makes it super easy as a developer, makes it super easy for validators so they don't have to constantly go back and go get those commands. It just works. You set it once and you're done.
I love that. And then I believe note, like there used to be memo, and the memo got deprecated for note. Is that right?
There's two memos. It's called note in the SDK, but really like Kepler and things call that memo. So this note here is the memo, but users confuse that with like adding your mnemonic in there. So I wanted to make sure to still keep that same name on the SDK side, but there's also a memo within IBC packets for fungible IBC token packets. So it gets really confusing. So I wanted to specify note here. That way that it's like, sure, like this is the note. And so this would be attached to every single transaction. So maybe if you're working on Juno, you want it to always say like, hey, this is from Mike or something like that. And you can now have that in all of the transactions you do through the CLI will automatically populate that into explorers and on the chain itself.
I love that. I know there's been some conversations on Twitter about like, how do you, because we've developers are like, have to deal with this. And I think one of the approaches I've seen was like, you can have an environment variable that's like TX flags, but then you still have to like add this weird thing to type at the end of your command that's like $ parentheses echo tx. Yeah, it's that didn't really feel that great. So this is just gonna like significantly shorten the commands you can do, and so you don't have to, like you can just boom 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 and done. The way that I was actually doing this, Reece, was I have this open source clipboard manager, and you can assign like key bindings to it. So I literally have one for like Osmosis, Neutron, like all of these. And so it's like, I hit the key thing and I say, okay, command N is for Neutron. And then that will give me all the gas ones for this. So anyway, this is like, I can't go back, now that we have this. And so this is also a cry for help to the other chains to like adopt this. because it is quite inhumane otherwise. So how would other chains kind of swiftly do that?
So because the way that the CLI works, if your chain is using some environment variables, which every single chain does by default in Cosmos, you're able to throw any of those options into this config. So you can go through Juno contracts slash Juno slash PR. I believe it is was it 601, I believe. And so you can just developers can go look at that. They can see how I implemented it and then add more functionality on top of it for maybe custom chain features that they have of something that they want to add with their custom modules or something, where you could then specify that in the configuration there. So this is like a default SDK implementation. But of course, you could add things like if you had a fee share module or you have the new Alliance module, like you could add those features into this as well to allow users to be able to configure that if those flags are required in some commands. And so that's very useful just to have everything in one place, and then someone can share that configuration with someone else. And it's much a nicer approach than a bunch of command line argument flags through a transaction flag bash variable.
Amen. And it's only like 310 some odd lines of code. So this is actually like pretty low effort for other chains to introduce. And so anyway, like thank you for doing this and like extremely quickly. And I will just say as a developer, like this is a very strong signal to like have Juno and like a dev from Juno just like recognize this as a problem, recognize it's a problem specifically for developers, and like Juno is like, you know, a cosmosm chain where you need developers to like really bring value. And like for me, this was like a very strong signal of like, cool, they understand our pain points and they are like prioritizing it. So like, thank you for that, big time.
Yeah, it's important that, you know, as an incubator chain, as Juno, like we need to make development easier. And like while all the cool things like mesh security and just all these new modules and ideas that are coming out, it's important to focus on the basics as well of just this small little configuration here. Lots of validators, lots of developers have reached out directly to me, very thankful for this because it simplifies, you know, other issues that they've had in the past, and they can specify it once and it's set and it's done. And just that quality of life improvement we're trying to bring not only to the command line, but to other aspects as too, like local interchain that will be coming out soon and other development tools that we want to make to build on Cosmosm easier cross-platform, whether you're on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, whatever. Just trying to improve that experience across the board. And, you know, that starts at the CLI and it will end with entire environments that are automatically set up for you.
I love it. Well, yeah, I mean, I think let's just keep it short and sweet. And thanks again for explaining all this, and thanks for bringing it to me. And man, it has made a big quality of life difference for me. So thanks for the third time.
Absolutely. Glad to hear.
Awesome.